We have to remember that because they are the key to actually our future. You can't get to the children without getting to the mothers.
That's right.
So the brothers, you have to kind of lower your testosterone, recognize who brought you here, recognize you were female eggs first,
That's right. Islam.
and cutting through the chase. Let's get some work done. Islam most.
Islam.
One of the things, I'll let that roll over. We have been discussing some things earlier, and just update you a little bit, because I'll be dealing with people from around the world, actually. A couple people from England, one from Japan, Australia, Costa Rica, just in recent conversations. And one of the things that I recognize is that a lot of the Moors here are just not up with what the Prophet laid down to us. I think a lot of times we get so busy respectfully giving honor to Prophet Noble Ali as the man, as the illustrious prophet, that we forget the work that he did or the keys that he gave us. Not that everybody does, but the indicators is that they have not been applied. Polishing them. So like these things we have here, and these could be vases, right? And they could be beautiful, right? And we get them and we treasure them and we polish them and everything, and put them back on the shelf. And that's in some ways what people have done with Noble Ali's work. And so in many ways, Moors suffer unnecessarily. And then they keep looking for remedy when the remedy was brought. It's sort of like having medicine on a shelf and not taking it. You got good, it's cool, talk trash. You ain't gonna get wealthy, you're not gonna take it. And one of the things I recognize, there's violations and a lack of consciousness in many areas when Moors look at this movement. And they don't take into consideration timeline. If y'all have paper and pencil, please mark these things down. And I know you already know things, but please don't try to retain them. Mark them down. Because we have to make reference to a lot of the stuff in the future. And I'll keep in mind, like the Prophet said to the Moors, said, you need each other now, but you're going to need each other even more so after a while. We're already at the after a while.
That's right.
And the Prophet said, you're not Negro, black, colored, or Ethiopian. Learn of your ancient mothers and fathers' divine creed. Come and link yourselves back with the families of nations. And this is what you discover. When you're talking to a lot of Moors around the country, and some off these particular shores, because there's other people in other nation states that are being directed by and following the teachings of Noble Ali too. I know some of you know that, but I'm saying it's one thing to know it, it's another thing to communicate with them. And what I recognize is many of the Moors in the homeland are behind knowledge base in certain key areas. I think we've gotten comfortable, because the Prophet came directly to us here. People have a tendency to get in this kind of idea that they own the Prophet, or that we got the Prophet and nobody else do. Well, it's a grand mistake. How many of you are aware of the Clearfield Doctrine?
Clear field.
Yeah. Now, I want you all to pay attention because this is a good lesson. Go ahead. Yeah. We can review. Now, I want you all to pay attention to what I'm saying right now, because remember, Moore's job is to cure for everybody else. Everybody's looking at you. They're looking to you. They're looking for your guidance and your respect. And they're expecting certain things from you that you can produce, but you can't produce without knowing. Sincerity doesn't get it. Sincerity is great. Good intentions are good. but don't come to the surgeon's table with rusty butter knives, because it usually don't work out real good. You know, and I think a lot of times after Moors are with this knowledge for a while, we have a tendency to get arrogant and self-righteous, you know, but that's a training that we learn from the dogma systems. Remember, knowledge is always to make you humble, to make you recognize what you don't know, and understand that everything is designed to graduate. Now, the reason I ask you that, I want you to look at each other. You know, we're preparing for the Skype, and so some of these things we're going to go over again, you know, for others. But this is for our body here, and since we're all together, we can share, because we really need to step up our game. You know, we need to learn how to jab a little better. Now, pay attention to the response. It's important to pay attention to the response, because I want you to do this with your family and friends. Now, how many of you are aware of the Clearfield doctrine? Raise your hand, and then look around. Now, consider this. You're active Moors, right? The prophet said, I want active Moors, not passive Moors. In a sense, what it means is if you don't activate this information, or you don't accelerate this information and make an impact with it, you may as well go back to the state. Doesn't mean that you're not sincere to the movement. It means what he needs now are charged people who are going to make a change, because you're living the history that changes the world. And that's the real truth. And even though we're small as individual units, you know, together we're strong.
That's right.
But let's talk about how. You know, this is the deal. How many people know, these are keys, how many people know the absolute true distinction between a republican form of government and a democracy? Raise your hands. Now, I want you, everybody pay attention. Raise your hands. So we got 3, right? Now, we're not going to charge you to explain. We're going to ask you, and I want to show you what we need to do. Because sometimes we need to look at ourselves to see where we are to determine where we need to go. How many of you are aware when the Republic was overthrown officially? Raise your hand. All right. That's 1, right? How many of you are aware what year, as a matter of fact, write these questions down, that the Republic was the first real coup, put it that way, C-O-U-P.
Yeah, cool.
The coup. What year was the first coup of the United States Republic? All right? So all these things are being set. I'm presenting these things so that make sure that everybody's on the same key, because some of you, a lot of you, we're talking to the choir. But we have to talk with the energy that others don't know. We can't take things for granted, because you can't take it that people are going to go and fix things when they really don't have all their tools. Just because we come to all our meetings don't mean you have all your tools. And it's not a shame not to have your tools. It's a shame not to admit you don't have your tools. You know, and then going out trying to build something and either failing or making flaws. All right? Just questions. And remember, we're going to repeat some of this stuff, you know, for Skype purposes. But we want to get everybody here grounded so you'll know where we're going with this. You know that for years we've been preparing for an advanced suit in Moors in general. Well, the reality is you cannot take incompetent people and get them on a forum for international principles when they don't really have a foundation, because they themselves will start countering for lack of comprehension, fears that are ungrounded. Their language doesn't change because they don't understand what they're dealing with. You know, just like you see a lot of people will say things like this. You know, the prophet said, it's not having confusion, respect the government and stuff like that, right? And they don't, And saying that, they're not taking in consideration that the republic, although it was secretly overthrown,
Right.
is that it was not openly overthrown until 33. That was their coming out of the closet party, but it was already overthrown, which the nature of the Moorish Divine National Movement is a countermeasure to that. It is fundamentally basic, but in its repercussions, complex. And so, if you just say things like that to people, they have a tendency to shrink under the weight of it, and then retreat. And it may appear so daunting that they have a tendency can't box Goliath, and then go back home, and then they're food, not knowing that they're food. Thinking that not being involved gets them off the hook. Like they off the plate. Work won't get them, and because they're food. And even to say that kind of turns people off, because we have this idea that we know Jesus, God, Allah, Muhammad, and all this stuff, and we're saved and nobody else is. Remember, that's part of the training that the dark priesthood put upon the world too, to give people a false sense of confidence and security while they're being fed upon. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So let me know when you cued in.
Yeah, just keep rolling.
Because the first coup, let's cut to the chase. The first official coup took place in 1871. Yeah, and then 5 years later, your 5 principles. 5 years later, the prophet was made manifest in human flesh. 1886. Pardon me, no, we have a part that's not counted. Yeah.
Okay. That.
No, I was actually thinking about something else,
I know
which I
what
don't
you're
want to get into right now.
I know what
Not
you're
that-
thinking about.
Yeah. It's not, yeah, all right. Because I don't want to load you all with a lot of stuff. I want to lay some keys out. 1871 was the first official coup. There are certain fundamentals that everybody needs to know and keep in mind at all times. Is that the so-called founding fathers were 360-degree Masons, brought into order of government under the protections of Sidi Muhammad, Sultan of Morocco. They were not Christians, they were deists. So these keys are important to understand, so that when the European gives you reconstructed history, you know it's reconstructed. And because you have to know their thought patterns to understand the government of which you have allegiance to. The nature of that government to which you have allegiance to is an allodial flavored government under Republican form. Now, you also had those who were deviously trying to overthrow. The overthrow took place in 1871. Nevertheless, keep in mind that the Congress for the United States adjourned sine die. So write that down, S-I-N-E. Next word, dia, just like die, D-I-E. Sine die, that means without day. That means when they adjourned sine die, that means it was essentially dissolved. Are we clear? However, the heirs of the estate, due to their mental state and political economic position, logically weren't competent to take their places. So by default, European colonial operations continued, because the heirs still were in a state of thinking human beings are crayons, thinking they were Christians, thinking they were getting religion, a whole bunch of other things. You know, these are dynamics were much of an illusionary, but they were the political realities to the people. However, all of it was fictitious, fraudulent. And their lives have been molded around these false concepts. And so to actually redeem them from that negative state and status is difficult on 2 points. One, because they think they have religion. They were never given religion. They were given dogma. And this is across the board. Do you understand? They think they were getting paid. Some of them were getting compensated to some degree. You know what I mean? But the Europeans were really taking it back. And then they later fixed that even to another degree when they did their coming out party and then did what you call one of the last legs of stealing our gold and silver, which is the mission why they're here. And that's when they came out of the closet with House Joint Resolution 192.
192.
Yes, so House Joint, I know y'all have this, but House Joint Resolution 192, that's their coming out of the closet party under Skull and Bones member Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 1933. And of course, once they start coming out of the closet, that's when they just came out with it like, yeah, this is democracy. These are the demons. You know, and now keep in mind when the prophet was on the scene, they were still respecting the Republican form of government.
Yeah.
Do you understand? Which is the legitimate.
Exactly.
So what you're dealing with is real and illusion. De jure, de facto. Actual, fake. Legitimate, illegitimate. And what I recognize, a lot of times when people are doing an analysis of the prophets' literature and also the things that they're doing, that they're not taking these things in consideration at all. At all. At all. You must. If you don't, we pay. And you've been paying for it. And so what we want to do is to try to get Moors who are active and honorable to comprehend certain things that we say that they may or may not understand, because many Moors have had this information and don't graduate. They just stay in stagnant formation and think that they're remaining with the order, and they're really out of sequence. They need to graduate. And if we're going to help the world, we must help ourselves. You know, and so, again, like we were saying earlier, right? The distinction between a republic and a democracy. Raise your hands. All right, Grand Sheik, give us a report on the distinction between a republic and a democracy.
Like the state's constitution, it says government must be expression of the will of the people. So the people have come together and agreed upon certain conditions for them to maintain society, and have appointed elected officials to best represent their wishes. Whereas though democracy is counter that. That means that the elected officials have gone contrary to the position that was delegated to them, and are exercising power, which is an illusion, which did not come from the people. And that's because the people are unconscious about what government really stands for. So,
Exactly. Thank you, Grand Sheik. Grand Sheik.
That was very well put.
Yes.
I was going somewhere like along the lines of this a little bit further. The difference between, in conjunction with what the Sheik just said, is the lack of knowledge of the people knowing that they are the people, the government. See, that's the biggest trick that Satan convinced the world, was that he didn't exist. So they gave up their birthright. Once you elect these elected officials, if you don't hold them to it, to their constitutional oath, then they get to run amok. See, democracy is mob rule, and see, they have already committed treason. They've been committing treason now for quite some time, because the republic is we, the people, for the of the people, for the people, by the people, is a republic. This is the organic, but nowadays it's being usurped because the people have lack of knowledge of what the republic is. First of all, if you ask the average person what the Constitution is, they don't even know what you're talking about. So they're being usurped by a demon, because they don't have an idea, but what the power that they hold as the true republic. Islam.
Islam, good brother.
Islam. I rise to give praise to Allah, honors to Prophet Nabi Ali, honors to my Grand Sheik, honors to everyone here. Islam.
Islam.
A republic, like Sister Grand Sheik was saying, is that the people will vote in representatives, but these representatives, before making decisions on anything, they get a gathering of the people, get their demonstration on the situation before they report that. With a democracy, once the people elect somebody into position, they're going to do what they want to. The people ain't got nothing to say about it.
Now, but shouldn't the people at the same time, and this is where, like, when the Prophet set up the old Canaanite temple and the Holy Temple of Science, the Moorish Science Temple of America, collectively the Divine and National Movement, one of the requirements of every institution is that they must have a school and they must maintain a press. This is part of their charter. If they fail to do that, logically it's like selling somebody a car, a beautiful car with no engine. And I suggest that we've been suffering from that across the world, across North America, and that caveat emptor had not been enforced, and so all Moors are suffering unnecessarily. We're not going to waste our time critiquing them. What we're going to do is correct what we do, or enhance what we do. Carry it out, because we have to do it for the next generation. Because what we do recognize right now is that those who've had this information, for the most part, haven't appreciated it. If they had, they would not have let things fall apart. They didn't fall totally apart. They slowed them down. But we got another thought coming for them. We got to make sure that people aren't guessing as to what's going on, that they have a knowledge of what's going on. We don't need to guess. We don't need to almost. We need to know exactly what's going on. Just as an interim for those who don't know, who may not be aware of, let's go to, if you're part and parcel of a government, you're supposed to be aware of what it is documented in relationship to the operations to sustain that said government. The fundamental laws that govern, foundation laws that govern nation states, the state has multiple meanings, we can deal with that later, is its constitution. And then what you have is you have laws or rules of law that harmonize with the Constitution, and then all party members to the Constitution must maintain the same principled format, although they may have some what you call their different laws and customs, etc., but they must be in harmony with the grand body. That Republican form you'll see expressed in the Holy Quran relative to the charters. It's exactly the same, And so you're still talking about the imperial divan, the principles of the imperial divan. And so when you're looking at government, you always measure it, that doesn't change. And it's based on the natural constitution of man. It's actually, so when you're looking at the divine constitution, you're actually looking at a social political reflection of the very nature of man in his divine order, made manifest to operate in the physical form as close to perfect as you can be, meaning that the body form has limitations. And so when we bring things down to its most aggregate form, you'll see the trine up and the trine down, which is hex alpha, which they call the shield of Solomon's shield. So that means as above, so below, you're dealing with the laws or rules of correspondence, etc. Now, let's go to military manual so that everybody's clear what's up. Now, keep in mind, it's 1928. And remember, 1929, they got the Prophet out of the way in the physical.
That's right.
You understand that? Don't stop them from doing the work. They may have slowed them down, but they can't stop them. So I'm going to show you how in a minute. Anyway, training manual. That means everybody should be aware of this, particularly anybody that's a soldier, anybody that's on the vanguard, anybody that has to do some cures. You don't guess, you're supposed to know. Soldiers Training Manual, TM 2000, United States War Department, November 30th, 1928. TM 2000-25, 118-120, Democracy. Democracy is a government of the masses, authority derived through mass meeting or any other form of direct expression, and it results in mobocracy. The attitude towards property is communistic, negating property rights. The attitude towards law is that the will of the majority shall regulate whether it be based upon deliberation or governed by passion, prejudice, and impulse without restraint or regard to consequences, and results in dogmatism, license, agitation, discontent, and anarchy.
Political repression.
So when politicians be saying people want the democracy, and people say, yes, we want to bring democracy to them, you already know that they're on the demon side as well as ignorant.
That's right.
And so any Moorish American that goes along with that and doesn't counter that, and then talk about their for the prophet and the divine national movement, they're either COINTELPRO, they're incompetent, or they're just on the demon side. Just that, because it's either way they're incompatible. You know what I mean? And but not to condemn them as beings, because they got to be what their mother made them. You know, because you're not going to have any good without a side mixture of evil. However, we need to bring the vanguard up to the top because Rome is upping their game.
That's right.
Because they're being dissolved, and so you got to be aware of the moves of the chess. You can't be moving, playing, you know, like, oh yeah, I'm fired up. Well, good. You better learn how to box.
That's right.
TM 2025, 120, 121, Republic. Keep this in mind. Article 4, Section 4 of the American Constitution guarantees a Republican form of government for every state in the Union. Are we clear?
Yes, exactly.
So there's the supreme law, right? Nowhere in that document does it say democracy.
No.
So we're getting past that, so there's no debate. We don't even need to go there. A republic's authority is derived through the election by the people of public officials best fitted to represent them. Attitude towards property is respect for laws and individual rights, and a sensible economic procedure. Attitude towards law is the administration of justice in accord with fixed principles. Attitude towards law, yes. Fixed principles. And established evidence. That means stare decisis or res judicata. Established. Are we clear? With strict regard to consequences. A greater number of citizens and extent of territory may be brought within its compass. Avoids the dangerous extreme of either tyranny or mobocracy. Results in statesmanship, liberty, reason, justice, contentment, and progress. So as you can see, the Grand Sheik was saying democracy is actually the opposite. It is representative of the lower self.
That's right.
The republic is representative of the higher self
Right.
on the physical operative plane of government. Islam.
The prophet said, evil is no requisite of man, nor is vice necessary to be tolerated. But how many evil have committed by the breach of the law? How many crimes committed by the council? This is why they're in checks and balances.
Yes.
Because they know, because of their lower self, that these things have to be in place.
Yes.
And this is what the people put in place because they know themselves.
Yes. And this is basically what Allah put in place. What you must understand, Allah is expressed in man, but these principles are ancient. They're archaic. You know, and again, these things don't have to be made up. They already exist.
They already exist.
What we need to do is uncover them,
And
uncover the
enforce them.
principles, clean it up.
Enforce it.
Islam, Grand Sheik, go ahead.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, by myself. I'm going back to what you're talking about, but the flag, the United States flag, that gold, what is that called? The fringe, gold or whatever?
When the fringe, that's called military tenures.
Oh, okay, so does that mean that they're suspending the Constitution?
No, what they did is suspended themselves. A lot of things, let's talk about this a little bit, just for a minute, you all. A lot of statements that are made have been accepted and people have been operating off of them. Constitution has not been suspended. They have no authority to suspend the Constitution. What they did was fired themselves. You know, it's sort of like somebody working at the store, you know, at Mickey D's or something like that, right? And they break all the rules and walk off the J, and then they want to keep pulling the check, and then talk about, well, this is Wendy's Burgers now. Oh, it's not Wendy's Burgers, just because they said so. They just fired themselves, and then they gonna come in and then sit down and with a gun telling everybody, you know, I'm running this thing.
Right.
The charter ain't changed.
But they are doing that.
Yes, this is what it's called now. Here we go. This is why people must know the distinction between de jure and de facto. That would be called, in law, de facto.
De facto.
Yes. The proper and correct is de jure. Of course, we're talking to the choir with y'all, but we're talking for others who may be looking at the Moorish movement, which has been misrepresented by some Moors to other persons. You know what I mean? Discouraging them, etc. And if you give people fundamental rules, or what you call maxims of law, they themselves will comprehend the connection to the movement, meaning that it's not the person who they're talking to, this is their birthright. See, we have to bring people to a degree of comprehending their involvement in this movement, not because they're just interested, and we bring them to some level of interest that, oh, I'm down with that. No, they have to recognize this is their stuff.
That's right.
They're as responsible as we are. Just because we're active, it's not our stuff. We're just channels. You know what I mean? We're trying to do the best we can with the little bit that we have. But this is as much their responsibility as ours. And what I recognize a lot of times, that point is not, it doesn't come across too well. And it's not that it can't. I think a lot of times, a lot of active Moors are missing certain keys, and so they're trying to get people interested with their own passion rather than just give them knowledge and let the, you know, show them the card. These are the cards. Let them go for themselves. Don't try. Well, the value of the ace is really, it doesn't work too well. Give them the deck. This is what these values are. And guess what? They're used all around the world. Oh wow, they're universal. It's because everybody don't talk about it. This stuff is universal. It's just that we haven't been on this forum, and so that's the only reason it's not familiar with us. Not because everybody else don't know this game. You've been outside the game. That's all. So, you know, get over yourself. Yeah, I know it's kind of hurt your ego. And let's get real. And all the economic and political problems we've been having is because we can't play the game. We've been getting in the ring talking about boxing and looking around with our hands down and come to the corner and he hit me. And the ref jumped me too. And, you know, and all this stuff. And you got your hands down taking pictures. You know, it's ridiculous. And so the world doesn't feel sorry for us necessarily because we're the direct founders of the founders of civilization that set these rules up. And we're kind of like almost the worst at the rules acting like it belongs to the European. Where's he going?
And so this is why I'm saying that people have dropped.
Speak a little louder too, because remember you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That the people have dropped the ball when it comes to knowing the Constitution.
Exactly.
If you don't have no rights, if you don't know your rights, you have no rights. And when you don't hold them to the Constitution, that's what the prophet said. You must hold them to the Constitution because they're only recognized by names and principles. And if you continue calling yourself black and African American, Negro, and colored, and living by those same standards, you are going to continue being mistreated by the de facto citizens.
Exactly.
And you're the true citizen.
Exactly. Can we have a fourth edition blacks?
Yes.
Go ahead, Grant. You.
Also, I want to add
Get to
on
that.
this. We've been dealing with this over a couple of days now.
Yes.
With various people around the country, and I think what we need to really do is clear things up from the understanding of government versus
Yes.
corporation.
Yes.
So a lot of people is having problem understanding that, and that's back to the Clearfield doctrine that he mentioned to you earlier. We have to really study the Clearfield doctrine to get an understanding what occurred. When you say they suspended the Constitution, you got to realize that the republic form of government, the Constitution and common law has to remain as valid against the Constitution as under against the United States as under the Confederation. Back to Article 6 of the United States Constitution. What they did was they went from public. When you're dealing with the public, you're dealing with the common people. You're dealing with the people, or we the people.
Right.
They recused themselves from the republic and set up private corporations, is what the Clearfield Doctrine will explain to you. Once they went to the private side, they went to a private corporation, and this is what you refer to as the U.S. Whenever you see the U.S. abbreviated, or United States abbreviated into the U.S., you're always dealing with a private corporation.
That's right.
There is no republic under that. There's no different from any franchise or corporation or corporate person that exists in the United States. They're incorporated, they have an incorporated date, and they have a charter for corporation purposes. But that's why they say that they don't go by the Constitution, is because they're a corporation.
And because they're not constitutional.
They go by corporate laws or codes at that point, which we know is UCC codes, that we're going to talk about all of this today to clear this up, the misunderstanding behind the UCC, the commercial codes, even the USC codes, United States codes at large. We're going to understand all of this because it's very important. Different venues, different jurisdictions have different rules and regulations. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like even the Moorish Science Temple has bylaws. But a bylaws is dealing with the corporate side of things. You gotta understand that. The Constitution is dealing with the lawful side of things, the government side of things. So once again, once we study and understand language, terminology, words, jurisdictions, venues, understand the structure of government, how government works, then when you hear a word, you can quickly categorize that into what venue it belongs in. So once someone tells you that they don't go by a constitution, you'll quickly have to recognize that, oh, they're dealing with corporation. So now if you're dealing with corporation, the only way they can have any type of jurisdiction over you or have any type of obligation over you is if you have a contract with them.
Right.
So as soon as they start talking that, then you want to question the fact, well, do we have a contract with each other? Is there a covenant between you and I? If not, then there's nothing binding that compels me to perform to your particular, your rules and regulations. That's like if McDonald's send you a summons to come to court. Would you go to McDonald's court? But listen to the dynamics of what we're talking about.
Because it's absolutely
The
true.
answer is no. But the reason why is because you don't have a contract with McDonald's. If you work for McDonald's, then that's a different story. If they summons you to the back, they want to have a meeting over something, then you compelled to go because you have a contract with them. You work there. But if you have no obligation with McDonald's, you're going to tell them you're going to rip it up and laugh at them. But why we're not doing that to the municipalities and other organizations that's telling us that we have a duty to perform to something that they created is because we don't understand.
And it's called tacit acquiescence. So that means you have a right to contract and you're agreeing with a fraud, and that's actually a violation of law because you're practicing something that deludes the servitude, the peonage, which is connotatively referred to as slavery.
Yes, brother.
Islam.
Can you spell that, what was that, Clearfield?
Yeah, yes. I'm going to read that. It's Clearfield. C-L-E-A-R Field.
Okay.
That's Clearfield, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Doctrine. I'm
Okay.
going to go over it a little bit to give you all a background. Now, keep in mind, one of the reasons why we're emphasizing it, not only because it's extremely politically and economically important for you and your families and your estate, it is because I recognize, again, a lot of Moorish Americans, in their zeal to protect the Prophet and the movement, keep making reference to government without specifying, or assuming that people, just because they're in a position of authority or on a seat, that they themselves are legitimate government, and think that when active Moors who are aware of imposters are acting different and putting them in their place, thinking that these Moors, active Moors, are against government. It's not true. And a lot of the criminals project that misinformation to control those who don't study, to create schismata or division, and therefore then beat everybody's butt after they, divide against each other when they're supposed to be on the same page. But what you find is that when you have a lot of Moors who don't study, they actually become enemies to their own cause and don't know that they're enemies to their own cause. So I'm going to go over the Clearfield Doctrine.
Islam.
Yes, go ahead.
Petition. Before you do that, let's wait till we get the other Moors in line.
Oh, yes.
So
when
then-
you do that, I said I
Yeah,
already let
but-
them know we're going to...
Because we're dealing with energy
Oh, yeah, all right.
once again.
Yeah.
So let's just deal with the ground floor. They'll be on in a few minutes. So
Oh,
we don't
all
have to, go back over this information.
All right.
Because this is really key. And it's really the key to understanding this whole puzzle, this whole Moorish movement. So we want to make sure that we say it, everybody understand, and everybody's on the same page. Because we're getting a lot of calls around the country about the UCC as being a remedy or a solution to the proclamation process dealing with the county recorders and the failure to perform their obligation to file our documents. And this is something that we have to nationally address. This is why we're doing this, because it's important that we enforce the law. The Prophet asked us, he pleaded to us to enforce the Constitution.
Right.
And the reason why he's saying that, because it has not been enforced, not just by us, even by people who claiming to be government. That's the problem.
Right.
This is more than just us that he's addressing. He's addressing the administration of government, period. And not just this particular government here, but he also is addressing the nations of the earth. And as he said, they are awaiting for us to be more wisely prepared, because this is the key. This is Northgate civilization here, and we got to understand that this is the hub of the universe. And until we elevate or raise the vibration of our mindset here and raise the substance of our body, then we're going to stagnate the rest of the universe. And not just people talking, but also the universe, meaning everything involved in nature, is affected by our mindset, our vibratory tone. You understand that we're dealing with this artificial snow, but once again, don't look at it as it just being artificial, that this harp or somebody's creating this. You got to understand, where is it coming from? This is a reflection of our lower self. Although there might be people that we can point the finger who have chemical studies and research that can create certain things, but it's still a reflection of our mindset. So we allow these things to take place. And then we look at it as someone else is attacking us, when we don't realize our relationship to the attack. It's the lower self, period. And if you look at how the Prophet Noble Drew Ali taught us, he didn't really point the finger at this person, the European, although he told you things that European has done to you. But his real target, the real enemy that he directed us to, was who? His name is who? Islam. So we're going to quickly recognize why we're suffering, where it really comes from. Once we fix that issue, then everything else will fall in line. Then we won't be able to point the finger anymore. Then we wouldn't even suffer anymore. So it's a whole science to this. Also dealing with the county recorders. We have the national petition going on as we speak, dealing with the county recorder's office for failure to perform their obligation by filing public documents. Not just to us, but for other people who have went down there too and have been blocked or denied from filing public documents. Even UCCs is starting to get blocked, and you got to understand why. For a while, they was filing the UCCs with no problem, but now they're starting to block people from filing UCCs, and then we're going to address that and why. Most of it is coming from the inconsistency of knowledge or how and why and the status of who's filing it. We got to understand that. Because sooner or later, you're going to force their hand where they're going to start coming up with these fraudulent charges against people who's filing. So beware of that if we don't really get on board with this. But the ground floor behind the county recorder's office that's a constitutional office. The county clerk is the officer of that court, i.e. clerk. Some jurisdictions run the clerks, the justice of the peace, the county courts with the county clerk's office as a joint office, all depending on the population of that county. Major cities separate them and say, okay, the court clerk is separate from the county clerk. Then they will have what they call a city clerk. So this is something else that I'm running into where people are confused according to where they live at or where they domicile. They're confused about which clerk do they go to. They're going to the county clerk, and the county clerk is telling them, oh, we don't deal with that here. You got to go to the city clerk for that. The problem is once you go down to the city clerk, that city clerk is not elected. The city clerk is a municipal clerk. It's a quasi-clerk. So once again, now you're dealing with an unconstitutional officer. Even the county clerk who was elected have abandoned their post and became statutory and corporate within job description. So they're not 100% constitutional either, but they still hold a constitutional responsibility because they're claiming that office. And this is back to what we were just discussing, what Brother Ozma said, well, they don't follow the Constitution, or they said they suspended it. Listen to this, if they claim they suspended the Constitution, then why do they use the Constitution to validate their offices?
Exactly.
Why do they still have those public elections that we spoke about if they suspended the Constitution?
Right.
So they pick and choose when they want to use the Constitution, am I right?
It's treason.
So once again, that's when they say that to you, then that's fuel and ammunition to respond to them with these questions. Exactly, freeholders, county freeholders. New Jersey is the last state to uphold the terminology in the office of the freeholders. All other states reduce their terminology or the language of their office to board of directors. So they refer to themselves as board of directors. You need to know this too, because
Yes, they
Moors
are.
is going down there trying to file documents, and what they're telling them is, let us make a copy of your documents, and we have to send this to our legal department, and then you'll get an answer from the legal department. That's corruption. But the problem is the Moors are walking away from that office saying, all right, letting them make a copy on their documents, and now you're in collusion. And here's why. The legal department that they're making reference to is just their attorneys. Their board of directors in some states, here in New Jersey, referred to as their freeholders, they have a attorney team that they hire that represents the clerk's office or the county seat, period. They refer to those people they hire as their legal team. Because the counties are so vast and big, they can't have one attorney. They deal with multiple issues in the county. So you figure they have a team of attorneys that's paid or they're on the payroll by the county clerk. So they're referring to them as their legal team. They're esquires though. They have foreign authority from England to practice law, and they don't even deal with law, they're dealing with corporate law. So you gotta understand that. They have no constitutional obligation, jurisdiction, responsibility to even look at your documents. Now, they're going to send it to them anyway, but you can't control that. But within understanding the law, you don't want to agree for them to send something to someone that has no lawful responsibility to even overlook it. You're supposed to let them know that the county clerk is the one that we, as the people, put here to do this.
That's right.
The county clerk has the last say so on whether they do or do not do something, not the attorney. Only the thing the attorney can do is advise them on what they think that they should do, because that's what they're getting paid for. But once they make that statement to you, what they're doing is they're passing the bucket, because they don't want to really tell you to your face that they're not going to do it. So what they're going to tell you is, we're going to see what the legal team say about this. And you're supposed to stop them and say, the legal team worked for you. You're the constitutional officer here. You were elected. The attorneys wasn't elected. So why are you taking advice from them when you're supposed to tell them what to do? But once you say that, it shows your mental state. It shows that you understand the law and how it works. By agreeing to it, lets them know, it buys them time to put the screws to you, because they already know that you don't know what you're talking about. So that's one of the reasons why we're suffering, is because they recognize our lack of understanding of what they're supposed to do. So it buys them time to go back to until they see you again.
Yeah.
You understand where I'm going with that?
Getting ready to box.
So once again, that's something else that we're gonna get into. I don't want to go too heavy.
Get them trying to wrap their hands and put their gloves on.
Yep.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
they just buying time. No different from
Get a nice lather going.
Exactly.
Until
Uh-huh.
the rim's wet.
exactly, and they got, you know what I'm saying, you got them dazed, right? It's 8 seconds left. The bell about to ring. They could have been knocked out, but the bell saved them. See what I'm saying? It's the same concept. So instead of you really giving them the knockout blow, they were able to, the referee stepped in and saved them. So
go
now
back
they can go back and recuperate and see how they want to come back at you.
Look at the
Now
flame.
they already know your argument. Look, listen to the dynamics of this.
We'll talk to the trainer.
Now they know your argument. They already examined your mental state. So now when they go and do research, they know exactly what to say to you next time you come there.
If you're not ready.
And this is why they keep telling us they're dealing with us on a case-by-case basis. Because somebody else might walk in there, and I have knowledge of this. Some people go in there and don't have a problem. They might get resistance, but they at the end of the day, they might leave successful. It's because they was consistent and persistent on what they were doing, and they didn't leave there until they got a favorable reply. Others, they run out of information or words to say, and they leave because they don't know what else to say. And don't take it personal. It's part of our growth. It's part of our learning experience. You know, and we all have to get to this point. Islam. If you have any questions, just save that. We're about to log back on.
Okay, just a pen.
So keep in mind, a lot of what we're saying is redundant, and it doesn't pertain to everybody. It doesn't pertain to everybody here. But we're also speaking plurally to the nations right now, and to other Moors in different territories. So the way we have to present information is based on the interest of the whole, and reserving and recycling energy and time, because we get high volumes of phone calls pertaining to these same subject matters. So to minimize a lot of the phone calls and the personal conversations on giving instructions on how to do things, we have to do things on a level like this where everybody gets it, then they can go back and review it, because everything is recorded here. Because you're not going to understand everything in 1 or 2 sessions. Islam. And this is why we record a lot of things and book it, put it in writing. Is because a person, thanks for coming out, brother. Man. People need time to go over what we're saying, research it, and also throwing this out. the case law that we give you, a lot of it is in documentations and affidavits and writs that we put out there. You'll find a lot of stuff that we're talking about, like the Clearfield Doctrine. That's not nothing new. That's all in your affidavits of fact, and anything that we have given over the years, the due process of law books, your right to travels, and all right, can you answer that, please? So a lot of this case law we're making reference to is not just an immediate remedy to a subject matter you're dealing with, like if you got to go to court tomorrow. Now you need this affidavit, or you need to know something. That the writs are designed for you to also study even when you don't have an issue. That way it gives you a better understanding on your position as a Moorish American or as a free national. Therefore, when you have to teach somebody else and you realize that they don't understand the difference between republic and corporate, or natural and artificial, or what happened, the suspension of, once somebody come to you with these questions, instead of you spending all your energy with them, you can just tell them to go research and go read that as well. So case laws is important for you to go study. Back in the day, before they had internet advances what they have now, we used to go to the libraries a lot and study this stuff. We had to physically go to the library and study all day long. We had to ask librarians for information on certain subject matters. We had to go over to take the physical books, go over to the copying machine and put a quarter or whatever into the copying machine and make copies of these things. And this is why, we're in the process of moving now, and this is right on key, but, we got so much information and junk. It's junk now because we don't have to utilize it. We still got floppy disks back before they had flash drives and had CDs. We got a bunch of floppies and stuff. We got attics full of this stuff. And we just sitting there laughing and reminiscing and going over all this old information that we gathered when we, first started dealing with this information. But nowadays, we don't have to do that anymore. Everything is right in Google. You don't have to leave your home, and what it did, it made us more lazy. Those who already have done it already had it. But for the new Moors coming in and new people who need to be educated, they don't really understand and they don't really take advantage of what they have today. And to the point where it's so easy for them to get information, they become lazy with it and they just take it for granted.
It's not easy, they don't want it.
Exactly. And this is important, but Islam family, we have our
Islam.
Canaan Land family online on
Islam,
Skype
Canaan
now.
family.
Islam.
Islam to you.
Islam, everything good? Can y'all hear us? All right. Say it again.
When you're standing, your head's cut off. We're recording it on camera, so.
All right, we'll fix that now. Thank you. Sheik is in need a little help.
You need to put the head back on.
Can this incline more? Because they said our head's being cut off. Just this, maybe we can. I got it. If we can just.
It just has to come up like this.
I will put it back. So I'm gonna slide this under here. That way it can go back more.
Alright.
Alright, then you can get the incline that you want. A little bit more to the incline. A little bit more. Islam, we're gonna work it out, family.
Yeah, Islam, I know.
Islam, we're gonna keep going until the Sheik is good. All right, sound all right? All right, Islam. Islam, family. All right, so to continue, and I guess we will recap now.
Yes.
Islam, everybody on board?
Islam.
Islam, this is part of the new technology we was talking about. We have several different locations right now simulcasting, and we're going to try to do this as Grand Sheik Kudro. This was his thought that we'll do the simulcasting of the meetings every second Sunday of the month. So we give him honor as well for, looking for innovative ways to collaborate our families, our meetings, our information, etc. Islam.
Islam.
So the subject matter of the today is going to be dealing with uccs, explaining what they are. We're also going to be addressing the obligation of the county recorder's office. We're also going to be addressing the misclassification of the race. And not just having knowledge or saying that we know what this means, but also applying this to our everyday struggle. Because these are the major components right now that's really stagnating us from exercising our life, liberty, the pursuit to happiness. And also, these are a lot of the questions and the phone calls we get every day of the week pertaining to these issues. So we want to kind of address this. I don't want to say for once and for all, because we're going to keep addressing it. We have to. But we at least want to address it with further information that you can research, and that way when we come back to the table, we are past a certain dimension of that. Because there's many different dimensions on what we're speaking about. Islam?
Islam.
Question, are you
Yeah.
both going to stand up at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Ask him if this is good. I just texted him.
Islam, is that better?
Yeah, you're good, Mark.
All right, Islam.
And the sound is fine?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Islam.
Islam.
All right, so starting off, I want to get into the Constitution. Now, the Constitution is for the Free National Republic of the United States of America. Terminology is everything. Language is everything. This is the terminology or the phraseology that Prophet Noble Joe Ali used. So we want to examine why did he use it and what was he making reference to. We understand United States have several different meanings, just like other words have several different meanings. But where we getting tricked at is not understanding what United States pertains to what conversation.
Yes.
So for all activity that your so-called government is making reference to, when they say United States, they're always making reference to the U.S. Now this is elementary information, but the U.S. is an abbreviation. And it's not an abbreviation for the United States of America. It's a separate jurisdiction. The U.S., whenever you see an the Constitution of the United States doesn't support abbreviations. That's one thing you got to know. So if someone want to trick you to saying they're abbreviating it just because they want to eliminate ink or writing, then you recognize that as a fraud. And you let them know that you can't sign anything or agree to anything that has an abbreviation because it's unconstitutional. So when Brother C and Bay make reference to never speak off the record of your Constitution, you got to understand speaking is not just verbally, but also in writing or in contract form. So if you're signing a document that's off the record of the Constitution, then you need to re-examine that contract.
That's right.
You need to renegotiate that contract, or you need to reword that contract. We're also going to be talking about templates, forms that's provided for you, i.e. Social Security forms, i.e. Forms in the nature of an appeal. We're going to court. The judge or magistrate is going to render a judgment against you. Then he says you have 30 days to appeal it. So now what we do is he sends us out front to the receptionist's office, and they got the forms already on the desk for you to appeal. You got to understand that that's color. So we're going to get into templates, forms, common law writs. For those of us that's taking notes, you write these things, and even if we can't address everything, you at least have it written down where you can go back over it, and we address it on the next session. And I talked about the misrepresentation of the race. All right? Write these things down, because you might have to bring me back to some of these things. So dealing with the county recorder's office. The county recorder is a elected officer by the Constitution of what?
United States of America.
No.
Free national
Nope.
constitution.
Understanding structure of law. The state's constitution. Now this is where we got to get into being statesmen. Alright, understanding we're more scientists, we're statesmen, etc. We have an obligation to the state republic. The state republic makes up the United States of America. There cannot be a United States of America, and that's I'm talking republic now, without a state body politic. Please, if someone don't understand that, raise your hand.
Get it clear now.
Not necessarily, but it's a good question. I'm going to address that too. The state's government, like I'm going to use the term New Jersey State Republic. New Jersey has not been the organic name of this body politic or the geographical area of the state. But it's the doing business name now that we go by. But New Jersey still has a state republic. A state republic means, republic just means people. Public means people. So the state's republic is the government. The people of the state is the government. The collective people within the geographical territory, that's another word you want to write down. I'm saying it because I know it to say that, but write it down the way I say it. You have to speak like that. Because to stay within the venue of the public or the republic, you have to stay within the venue of a territory. So New Jersey State Territory, i.e. New Jersey State Republic, one and the same. State is just a reference to the territory, but territory is an older term than state. So for modern day usage and language, we say the word state. But to bring your forefathers back into the equation, you have to implement the language of the forefathers. So you mix the language of your forefathers in with the language of the modern day usage just so that everybody's on the same page. You follow me on that? That's why we get the term Moorish American. Even though American is a corruption of Moroccan. But Moorish is more ancient than American. So Drew Ali strategically worded our nationality as Moorish American.
That's right.
He said, why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants, so he brought in the descent. Moorish is your descent. He said, and you were born in America. Even on a higher understanding, we know we're not born in America because of what America really represents. But for modern day speaking, communication, we have to word it that way. So Moorish American is a term, a language, a phraseology, i.e. a modern day nationality that was created by our own. This is important because some people don't understand. They think Moorish American is an ancient term in an ancient nation. We're descendants of an ancient nation. But times evolve and geographical areas have changed. people have changed, their names have changed. So modern day speaking, Drew Ali formulated a name, a nationality, and a body politic best suitable for our growth. That's important because understanding that it's not encumbered. No one had leave on it.
Exactly.
It wasn't an enslaved nation. It never been enslaved. Negro, black, and colored has been enslaved. Even Moroccan has been enslaved. Morocco has been enslaved. The Moroccan Empire came to a halt. You understand what I'm saying here? So it has experience and history with it during the time of slavery. But what did he say in Acts 6? This is a new what? Era of time now. And now he's saying we doing business a new way. Paraphrasing. So he gave us something that was not encumbered.
Yes.
And did not have lien on it, and nobody had any type of stronghold over it. So we started this off fresh in 1928. And he's a prophet, therefore, like you said, he was ordained by the great God of the universe to do that. So it wasn't by chance. That doesn't mean that anybody has the authority to just do that. You understand? That's not something that's put in the hands of someone who thinks that they a scholar. They think like, you know, you got these so-called leaders these days, so-called black leaders, I'm gonna call them, because they're dead mentally. But you know how they want to be the spokesman and the representative of quote unquote our people. You got to understand that the land is full of false prophets whose mission is to do what? Fleece the people. So now we dealing with a prophet, which was ordained by the great God of the universe. This is true and divine. And he came because of the situation that we're speaking about. Yes, Brother Shafiq.
Islam, Grand Sheik, I'm glad you said that about Moorish America.
Mhm.
This is what the prophet meant by his passage in the moon, where he says, so that's right, I wanted to say it then. But Moorish American is a Moorish. He says, oh, praise the Lord, we came back. He said, if you doubt that I, the prophet, have brought you the truth, I'm paraphrasing now, go to those that know law with an intelligent tone, and they will be glad to give you a favorable reply, because they would be glad to see that I brought you out of darkness into the marvelous light. In conjunction with what the Grand Sheik said, Moorish American, the ones that understand law know that Moorish is ancient, it's before, it's aboriginal and indigenous, before this was America.
Yeah.
So they understand, if you say Moorish America, descendants of Moroccans and born in America, they already know that you are the true aboriginal and indigenous people by law before they renamed it Al Moroccan and took the L out and called it America.
Islam, thank you. And a key point that you said, well, you missed it because you was paraphrasing, but I'm going to say it because it's important. He said, if you doubt my redemption process
Yes.
is right for my people, then go to those that know law. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that back up and wording it that way is because there's a lot of power within what he said. Because what he brought us is a redemption process to redeem us from our physical and our mental slavery. This is very important. So he gave us the information, the tools, the understanding, the language, etc., what we needed to redeem ourselves. He says, I gave you what it takes or what you need to save a nation. Now you take that and go save yourself. So once again, you got to understand it as a redemption process. Two, you got to understand his redemption process is a little different from other redemption process, and this is where we're getting tricked. Because a lot of Moors have accepted other redemption processes.
That's right.
I.e., back to the UCC. Now, you also had what we call the Patriot Movement. Started a couple decades ago from Europeans out west. You got to understand this. When they started coming out with the UCC, and they called it the redemption process. So it was a vehicle for themselves to break away from their understanding the Clearfield Doctrine. They studied that too. Understanding that the law or the assumed representatives went from the public to the private side. They got hip to that and realized that they were fertilized as well. So what they did was try to redeem themselves. And they started a movement referred to as the Patriot Movement. And within that, they came out with information that they needed based on their language, based on their status, based on their descent. And they referred to the packages that they gave their people as the redemption process. Now, because it used the language of sovereignty and things of that nature, traveling versus driving and all of the similar information to what we deal with. But because they referred to it as the redemption process and they dealt with sovereignty, a lot of Moors have been attracted to that redemption process. So what you have over the years is you have Moors mixing the Moorish redemption process with the Patriot redemption process. So you start getting teachers and lessons now that it's a mixture of both. And then now the Moors take the redemption process from the Patriot movement, try to incorporate it with the redemption process from the Prophet, and realize why they're having problems. Because it's a difference of status. And this is going to bring us into the UCC. We're not at that point yet, but that has everything to do with it. You had a question?
Just a statement. The Prophet addressed it like you spoke about state republic and state territory. You know what I'm saying? This is the reason why he brought us back Moorish American, because the government is expressed by primary your state's government, speaking on behalf of the national republic, because all the states are uniform and transparent. The Prophet said around one of the nations said, through your free national name you are recognized by the government of the world, according to the said government which you live in. So you can't claim to be part of this nation that I belong to a state's republic that is in the nation.
That's long. And also, brother, going back to your question, dealing with the state republic, the people of the state within the territory of New Jersey, I'm talking about the geographical landmass, right? The native people and the citizens of New Jersey constitutes New Jersey State Republic. Now, within us, the people, through our chosen representatives, is the government that we refer to as the government seats, or seats of government. So the way it's designed is we within the people of the state choose or elect people that we want to govern our affairs. And we set up departments of governments, checks and balances, to assure that our rights is protected and secured. That's the way de jure government is supposed to work. That is a republic, which is guaranteed to every state within the union. Right. That can't be changed. So the state is us first, before the United States of America. And that concept that we call it was the states. And actually some of the states before they became a union were actually countries and not states.
That's right.
So this is going back to the history and the science of government, where some of your larger western states were countries, as far as Texas,
That's right.
California.
That's right.
These were countries at one time. In later years, after the adoption of the Constitution and they tried to push this union concept, after the Continental Congress and confederations was formed, what they did was each state agreed to be a part of the union. So you had the several states at one time. It went through many different transitions. But there cannot be a centralized government, or what you call a national government, without the individual states. The individual states within the territories had their own government body politic. So they had their own state constitution. Follow me now? So now each state's constitution was the supreme law of the land at one time, before the United States of America Constitution became the supreme law of the land. And this is why a lot of the states rebelled against becoming a part of the union. Because at that time, the states, within their administration, were practicing slavery. and they were their state citizens were their wards. This is even before this United States as you know it. So the sovereignty of the state's representatives couldn't be checked and balanced by anyone outside of the state because they had the supreme authority to rule. And no one had any type of authority or jurisdiction to come into the state and say what you're doing with your slaves is unconstitutional, or how you dealing with state's business is unconstitutional. So your slaveholders at that time, which i.e. your plantations, mainly your bigger plantations, were your representatives of the state. And nobody can come in and regulate and control what they were doing with their i.e. state citizens, i.e. wards. So therefore, when a centralized government started to critique it and try to come in and say we're going to form this union, the states were saying, nah, we don't want to be a part of that. That's why Drew Ali was telling you about the North and the South coming into unit, placing the Southerners that were at that time without constitutional body of power. What constitutional body of power? You got to understand Drew Ali and what he was really sent for. But this is what he's trying to tell you. That's why he says, I traveled in the South. I examined the conditions there. You understand? Because they didn't come on board till later from a constitutional perspective. This is why he says that if you have family in the South, you better get them out of there. Let's hit this. Islam. Sheik, we need your expertise again. Islam is all right. Islam. So he said if you have family in the South, you better get them out of there.
The destruction going to start.
It's because of the vibratory rate of the people in the South, because of the generations of unconstitutional practice and mentality and vibration in the South. So it caused the ethers and the vibration in the South to be much denser than it was in the North. You gotta understand that the longer, regardless if we're enslaved by force or not, the everyday life cycle of slavery causes the vibrations to get more dense. It affects the vegetation. It affects the water. It affects everything within nature. It's a domino effect. So therefore, not just the people are slow, and you know how everybody say, oh, you from the South, you slow. Or they the last people to get stuff. They the last people to get caught up on the trend and this, that, and the third. We say that, but don't know why. The vibratory rate is a lot slower in the South. No disrespect, not taking it personally, even our online membership that's in the South. We need to understand, not from an emotional perspective, but from a scientific perspective, why things are the way they are down there. And it's up to us to evolve a little bit in order for them to evolve. The quicker we advance, the quicker they advance. You understand? So it's a domino effect, but it's also a national responsibility for everybody to help each other out, because we're still in the South as well. The reason why, because the North and the South is actually one. It's like the reflection of the higher self and the lower self. So what occurs is, no matter the condition of the rest of our people, we're still stagnated in growth and development as a nation based on what the rest of the vibration is up to. So we have a responsibility to simultaneously grow together. Islam?
Islam, just dealing with the degrees of North and South, East and West. You know that North and South are further extensions. You know what I'm saying? It deals with, the winter and summer solstices. When they're dealing with North and South, where it's so much further, things die. Not just dealing with you speaking about the South. The South is dealing with the lowest hemisphere, like you said, the lower South.
True.
So a lot of the things that happen deal with the lower nature or the carnal nature of that.
True, it's a polarity. Islam. And also dealing with that in the polarity of the North and the South being polarized, you're starting to see now this polar shift of the weather and the seasons. So you got to understand that too, and even from an economic perspective, you're going to see a polar shift. So once again, these are subjects that we'll discuss in later times.
Yes.
But we're just throwing it out there now, just because we're on topic. So going back to the state, this is how important the state is. And this is where Moors are also getting beat up at. Because you have to be a state citizen first in order to be a citizen of the United States of America. So what's happening or what's occurring is when we have an issue of identification, and we just presenting Moorish identification to say that we're citizens of the United States of America. What they're saying to you is, show me government ID. Listen to what I'm saying. Although that we are the organic body politic, the organic government, the organic nation, and we should not need any type of authentication from or identification from any other governmental agency or corporate agency. But the fact that we were in this state of servitude and we are repairing our nation, we have to build the credibility of our government, i.e. our nation, again, to the point where we can stand on our own and we don't need to show them any type of joiner, we call it, or relationship to validate our position as free nationals here in our own land. Listen what I'm saying closely. So we have to really crawl before we walk. I want you to understand this. Whether you do it or not, it's up to you, but at least have the understanding on what's being said to you. So the state's government, New Jersey State Republic, has its own constitution. We are citizens of the state, of the territory on where we domicile first. And from that, we are part of the Union, or the United States, which means the different states collectively coming together to form a national agreement, which is referred to as the United States of America. So now the citizens in New Jersey are united with the citizens of California. From a constitutional perspective, this is what the Divine Warning was saying, is the citizens of all free national governments, according to their what? Their national constitution, are all one family, bearing what? One free national name. The corruption within this is the free national name, though, because they refer to this as the United States of America, which is not a divine title of the government in which we live. But that's something that is going to be corrected down the line. But you got to understand how many generations Drew Ali wrote ahead of himself, where he was preparing us for something that was prematurely done. But understanding the law, you will automatically know what Drew Ali was up to because you understand law.
You know where he's going with it.
Exactly, because where he's going is where we have to take it. It's not for him to take it to those extremes. He brought it to our attention. And within ourselves, we have to choose our own representatives to do this. But going back to the relationship of the state. So New Jersey, and we abandon the state a lot. And this is our problem. We have to take back the state. So New Jersey State, the Moors in New Jersey, I'm speaking about the Moors here, and then this same universal rule will apply to Moors in other states. But giving you a quick example, the politics within the state of New Jersey, Moors are supposed to be adept in. And wherever there's a governmental forum pertaining to the politics of the states, Moors should be present. Even though we know that they're dealing with the corporate side of things and not dealing with the republic at all, if they're not dealing with it, who is? It's supposed to be us. So they choose to go private, but we shouldn't. Once they step out, they're really doing us a favor. So we're supposed to stay within the republic or the public. We're supposed to stay within the common law venue. Just because they decide to go elsewhere, that has nothing to do with us. Our mistake is we keep trying to go private as well. And that's the problem. When we do that, we recuse ourselves from the republic. So therefore, it's neutralized.
You leave yourself as easy pickings.
So when the concept of government arises, there's really no one to step into place because they abandoned their post and we never stepped up to the post. So therefore, is laying dormant out there, and nobody's activating the republic side of things from the state first. This is why we don't have a national representation pertaining to the republic, because we have not even got on the state level. You got to be able to be fluent in your state affairs before you can be fluent in national affairs. All your people sitting in Congress, your vice president, even the president, before they can be eligible for these positions, they first got to be very active on a state level. All of them are ex-statesmen from a perspective of holding some type of seat in the state. First, state senators and judges and, you know, just hold some type of seat first, and they have to be evolved in the political affairs of the state. They have to have good reputation with the state in order for them to step out and get to the national side of things. So you got to understand there's stages when you're talking about representation and leadership. So Prophet Noble Drew Ali was preparing us to take our place in the what? Affairs of men. Which means we got to start off from the bottom, from local government, and work our way up to national and then international government. But we as Moors, our ego pop out. We want to jump to the Hague. We want to go to United Nations when they have meetings, and we want to walk around like we the leaders of something, and we don't even understand states law first. But then we want to understand why they just laughing at us. You know, Brother Jamal first.
What are your thoughts on us getting involved in the municipalities, the local government?
Well, good question, because we're going to talk about that too. For brothers and sisters didn't hear him, he said, what are my thoughts about getting involved with the municipal government? Now, municipal government is actually quasi-government. Please write that down for everybody who doesn't understand that. Write it down anyway. Get more fluent in it. Municipal government. They refer to it as municipal government. But municipal government is a quasi-government, i.e. quasi-corporation. Municipal is a corporation. It means corporation. It's not a government at all. However, it's tricky, and you can back me up on this. However, like I said, you have to start off at the bottom, because the experience is needed from the localist level of things to the highest level of things. So we should be involved in municipal affairs as well, because we're still subject to the municipal affairs.
That's right.
You can't avoid it, even though it's quasi is a reality. So you just got to know how to deal with it. Meaning that you have a mayor, you have a board of directors. There's a way to work that as well. Your municipal courts is where we're most involved at. We hardly go to county court, and we hardly go to state court, and we hardly go to the Supreme Court. Am I right?
Right.
Although we need to understand that jurisdiction, so when we do go, we understand the terminology in the venue. But our most encounters or interactions are with the municipal quasi-government. So therefore, we must be involved in that, study it, understand its rules, regulations, its codes, etc., its seats, because it still has seats, its color. But it's no different from state. In federal, they're color too. So we can't just deal with one color and not deal with the whole color. We got to understand, because the federal and the state backs up the municipality. And once you start getting into this, you'll understand that a lot better. And then when you start doing your suits and complaints, you will know who's in collusion to what. Because they have to be a party to it. When you talk about notice to the principal, it's notice to the agent. Notice to the agent is notice to the principal. Then you'll know what parties are subpoenaed into this issue. So you got, I'm gonna get to that one. Just address this one, then let you. So when you go into the municipality, you have town hall meetings. You have Department of Taxation on a municipal level, which you definitely need to know about. If you own property, then you need to understand the taxation comes from a municipal perspective, or i.e. city, and then you have a county board of taxation, where you're getting taxed on a municipal level and you're getting taxed on a county level. So just understanding who's who, understanding how everything works. We're still subject to what the municipal rules and regulations are. You have what they call police officers, right? They're hired by the municipality. They're not hired by the government, which makes them corporate agencies or security guards for the municipality. I'm not saying that so you can disrespect them. I'm saying it so you can understand who they are and what their position is. They're private security agents. They work for the municipality. Also, the magistrates that sit in the courtrooms of the municipalities are not judges. They're not appointed. They're hired by the city or the county, the city or the municipality. They work directly for the municipality. They're hired to do so. They're on the payroll. They receive compensation for sitting in the courtroom and issuing out fines and time for traffic violations and city ordinances and everything else. They're hired to do so, which eliminates them from the title and seat of a judge. Judges don't do that. That's your other difference between magistrate and judge. You need to understand that.
The republic and the democracy. This is where we read that so the people will know the distinction.
So this is all dealing with state affairs first, because the municipality sits within the jurisdiction of the state. So we definitely need to be fluent on that department. Using the word interchangeably, the city, i.e. township, i.e. municipality. Also termed borough in some areas. All private corporations. They also refer to as public utilities. Why? Because they are a private corporation whose charter and mission statement is to provide a service for the public. That's referred to as a public utility. No different from New Jersey Gas, New Jersey Electric, whatever, what's the electric company?
Macy's.
Jersey Central Power and Light.
McDonald's.
They're corporations, but what their job is to do, or they say they do, is to provide a service for the public. They definitely monopolize the situation, but understanding this, we don't have a competition and option on what gas provider we can go to, because it's monopolized. It's a private corporation, but they got their hands in quote-unquote soon government seats. What means that they're getting compensated is they're pretty much the city government or government period, disguising themselves as a corporation, but really they're on a higher up level. But they can't say that because they will nullify their position. Because government is not supposed to get involved with these type of services. So they have to set up these private corporations within the corporation to provide services which they cannot directly be involved in. You understand that? That's why they set up DBA names and stuff like that.
Yes.
Because they don't want to directly be affiliated with the reputation of a service, but they got their hands in it some type of way. So you don't have a choice on where you can go because there's no competition to it. And if we try to set up our own gas company right now, we'll have some major problems.
They'll attack you.
It won't be just the gas company coming after you. You're going to see they're going to be higher ups coming after you because they all got their hands in it. That's another subject, but just letting you know where we're going with the state citizenship. Brother Cliff?
There's two-part. That's clearly a violation of delegation of authority. And also speaking about when you're spoken about knowing your position of power, because chapter 29, dealing with magistrate and subject said, thou is the favors of heaven, Remember, the degrees, magistrate and subject. They're
Yes.
magistrates, but they're subjects of the people. It says, thou the favors of heaven, with thy sons are equal, have raised the sovereign power.
Who agreed
Who agreed
to raise the sovereign power
power.
and set as a ruler over ourselves.
Equals.
That's Republic talk.
Republic talk. It
Say
says,
that again, brother?
it says, thou the favor of heaven, with thy sons are equal, have raised them the sovereign power to rule over themselves. Remember the ends and importance of thy trust is far more than the height and the dignity of thy station.
Or more important.
Important to the dignity and height of thy station. Knowing that your trust that was placed upon you oversees the dignity of your station that you so-called claim based off what you put your own honorship. But your honor comes back by way of the people.
And the
Chapter
key,
29.
yes, and the key to that is the sons of thy equals. Remember, Act 4, with us being part and parcel to what this government means that we are equal. We are equal. We have an equal share in government. Understand this. Because people who think that they're part and partial don't understand that partial is not equal to. Partial is less than equal. So if you're less than equal, then that eliminates you from a voice in governments. Once again, if you understand law, then you will know what the prophet said and what he didn't say.
Yes.
Very simple.
Yes. And why he said it.
Look it up legally, lawfully.
Right.
Also, the sons of thy equal, on whom we have agreed. Agreed means consent.
There's your republic.
The seats of the government is vested in the consent of the governed.
The governed.
The governed is us. We are agreeing through consent to put someone in power or in position or in seats of government to govern us. It doesn't make them higher than us. It really makes them subordinate to us.
Carry out our affairs.
Exactly. They become a public servant. We become a public servant. As soon as we take that title of leader or whatever we claiming, we become a public servant. So it doesn't matter if we're in a position that seems to be rankful over other people. Just remember that the people are the government and we become subordinate to them. I.e., that's how the government is supposed to operate. So when they sit there and be arrogant about what we're asking them or telling them to do, i.e. county recorders, the county recorder works for us. That's my point. The county recorder's office is only put there based on the ancient demands of our forefathers. Well, they created that office as a venue for the public to file public and legal notices. So therefore, it's an avenue for us to notify the public of any type of business that we're doing. Versus property, whatever we choose to do, a vested interest in anything. Any change of address, change of status, whatever we want. It was the county clerk's office, and also they used the post office for that communication in the past. Where the post offices used to have bulletin boards, back in the common law days I'm speaking about, where the people used to go down to the post office and post things on a bulletin board because the people didn't get mail delivered to their house back in the day. The post office was a place you went and picked up your mail. When the U.S. bureaucratized it, they created the Postal Service. And now the Postal Service comes to your house, drive around in those little cars, and stick stuff in your mailbox. And the mailbox itself is unconstitutional. You need to understand that, because when you're dealing with the Republic, you're also dealing with the term sovereignty. It's all related, being a free national. There's an activity and a behavior, a way you do business as such. And not just they termed us Negro, Black, and Colored and enslaved us that way, but they enslaved us through behavior and activity and lifestyle. So a lot of our modern day lifestyles is catered towards enslavement. So we might verbally say things that's related to sovereignty, but our actions are still related to enslavement. So if they don't get us one way, they get us another way. You understand? So you got to follow this whole practice when it comes to being a free national. Islam Sheik is Nika?
Listen,
Islam.
the municipalities, although quasi in nature and function, can be used for good in regards to being a public servant of ours.
Mm-hmm.
It's necessary, just like we say, because someone has to balance the book of those that are contracted,
All right.
those who have not performed.
Yes.
And becomes a public servant when
Mhm.
we're able to stand on the facts,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that they actually will have two hats in the office.
Mm-hmm.
You know, someone has to handle the affairs of those who are contracted,
Mm-hmm.
those who have not proclaimed, and handle the affairs of those who are inherited, have inherited the right to it.
All
Meaning
right.
this, they have assumed jurisdiction over the taxation of the property, the land,
Mm-hmm.
which is unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about the municipalities and the court systems, the first issue I will always is status.
Yes.
So we don't necessarily have to deal with that municipality at all. We can completely not deal with that office at all
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have the jurisdiction to, or we can allow them to be a public servant for us and manage those affairs.
Yes.
Because any situation or cause of action or whatever say any subject matter
Mm-hmm.
pertaining to a person, a proper person, a nationalized more,
Mm-hmm.
is outside the jurisdiction, is a federal question, and automatically is out of the jurisdiction.
Correct.
Dealing with law, they don't have the jurisdiction to tax, so we wouldn't need that done for that service because there is no taxation.
Yes.
You know, so it really dissolves that whole office for us. And it's
For us
completely
personally.
for us personally. So my point is that although the office is quasi or unconstitutional,
Mm-hmm.
it serves a purpose for those who have contracted with them,
Mm-hmm.
and meaning Asiatics that have not proclaimed a nationality.
Yes.
You know, so someone still have to govern the affairs of the servants
Mm.
of those who need to be governed.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem that we face is that us having to prove or having them to honor our status as one that they don't have the authority to make judgment over or
Mhm.
to tax.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. So if we can clear up and deal with that issue
Mm-hmm.
altogether, I mean, but that's that's the whole fight is
Yeah.
getting the status acknowledged and dealt with in proper
part of the
constitutional
program.
venue. Right.
Yeah.
But the municipalities really don't have a place for us, and we really dissolve the whole office
You know
based
what I
on
see to
status
that?
alone.
It's long, and this is my view on it, and we can go further into it. The municipality is providing a service for the community,
In general.
which some of it is a needed service. Although they're taking advantage of it, and because they're providing this service, they're also using that to monopolize off
Right.
it. I'm talking about us general, not just Moors.
Right.
I'm talking about just the citizens in general.
Right. To monopolize.
Now, here's the trick. Because they also enslave us or keep us a part of that wardship through the services they provide for us, and we accept them. So by accepting certain services, you automatically put yourself into the category as the debtor or as the wardship.
But is that a threat direct?
Yes, it's definitely under
don't
threat
allow
to
you
wrestling.
to do
Once
that.
you get conscious of it, and you, like you said, you manipulate it to work for you
Right.
by proclaiming yourself, declaring yourself properly, notifying your agencies, and dealing with them under different terms and conditions.
But what I mean is, once you do that,
Mm.
and then you provide that service without their need to provide that service, is
Well,
when they
yeah,
have a
that's what I'm
problem
getting
with
at.
it.
That's what I'm
They
getting
don't
at.
allow you to even take care of that service.
Well,
that needs to be done.
We can minimize and eliminate the services on a municipal level, like
Right,
Brother
that's good.
Irwin,
Right.
giving him honor. Brother Irwin here does not accept the service of the municipality to come and get his garbage. So on garbage day, they have to bypass his particular lot and block number, his allodial property, because he opted out of that service. Now, if you look at the tax breakdown of for people who own property and who are paying these taxes, if you look at the tax breakdown, you will realize that a portion of the tax is pertaining to garbage pickup. So now they provide this service to you, and you say, "Oh yeah, they come get my garbage. That's cool." Other areas they don't pick up your garbage. You gotta go out back and burn it, or get rid of it the best way you can. So they can't charge you for that. You see what I'm saying? Now they had to eliminate that from the service fee, because he said, "No, I'm not paying you. How much was it a month?
Like
$60?
$70.
Yeah, $70 a month. You really paying? People don't know this, but $70 a month is included in the taxation of the particular property to pick up the garbage." So he said, "No, I don't need that service. Don't come to my house." You understand? You got to write the contract and you got to write not the contract. But what I'm saying and what Sheik is saying is that we don't need these services. Some of them you might need, like the gas company. I know I like gas coming to my home, and I need some electric for now until we, really deal with it from a solar perspective of how we're gonna deal with it. But for right now, we still need certain services under threat, duress, and coercion. Certain services you can't get away from right now.
That's right.
Just keeping it real.
That's right.
But certain services that you can eliminate, you start to eliminate them. When we start using the term that we're sovereign, you got to understand to a point. If we're saying that we're a sovereign nation or a sovereign people, then that means, in its true sense of the word, we don't need anybody's assistance. That means we can stand alone. Remember, the individual is not sovereign. The nation is sovereign. And because you're part and parcel to that nation, you hold sovereignty because your nation is sovereign. So if we're saying that we're sovereign as a nation, then that means that we don't need the assistance of an outside private agency to do stuff for us, not unless we hire them to do it. That's a difference. So until we get to that level, we still have to deal with them under threat, duress, and coercion. Because once again, we're repairing our nation. It ain't all together yet. But we still have rights in the process of repairing our nation. Islam? So just sealing back up on the state's government. Did that answer your question on the municipalities? But because we're subject to it, we're still affected by rules that they make. We still should be involved on a municipal level, as far as when they have the town meetings, you go there. The Board of Education meetings. Regardless, even though the Board of Education is corrupt, we still need to be active. Just as our counter and our rebuttal to the color. Regardless if they change or not, just to show that, look, there's an active community here that's not standing for this. You do what you do to those people who consent to that, but you got to make some type of separate provisions for us because we're here. So until we get our own, you got to have a certain provision on the way we're going to do business here. And we have to establish that with everybody. To your county government, your state government, your national government. They need to be notified that there's a Moorish American community in there that's sharing the same territory as them, and they have to consider that. That's what they do with other tribes. That's what they do with the so-called Indians. Even though that they might be on reservations that they provided for them, but what they have to do is take in consideration that they have their own rules and regulations. And they have to respect the sovereignty of that individual nation. Same thing with us. Whenever a Moorish community is in a certain area and they are activating their governmental body politic, they need to take in consideration that they're there doing business. And that we're not subject to the statutory laws, rather we're subject to the constitutional laws. And that's what the Sundry Free Moors was saying.
Making that distinction.
If you're going to accuse me of a crime, the only thing we're saying is we want to be tried as a free national, as a Moor, under the Constitution and not under your Negro laws, i.e. your statutory laws.
That's right.
Islam.
So how do you feel about car insurance? Do you feel it should be like we should choose it or we shouldn't have to use before essentially we can get into an accident or hurt somebody, you think we should be able to take the option to get sued
No,
or?
no. You gotta protect yourself. Insurance deals with assurance. All right, and it also deals with limited liability.
Yes.
All right. Now, here's what I suggest. Not coming from a statutory perspective, but back to what Sheik Nika is saying. The whole intent of the Moorish movement was to get ourselves self-sustaining, to where we should have our own Moorish insurance companies and agencies, and our own municipal departments that we can have Moors going around picking up Moorish garbage if we need to, have Moors providing certain services. Once we get to that point, then we can eliminate dealing with the other private corporations. So until we get that insurance where we can release ourselves from liability, because be honest with you, if I run into somebody conveyance and they conveyance costs $30,000 and somebody get injured, I don't have the fiat or the gold or silver to compensate a person for their injuries. I don't.
So you think it's?
So I need something to release me from that liability. So I'm gonna use the insurance company for that purpose. I'll pay them a monthly fee to take that liability.
But do you think it should be a choice, like to use their services? Because insurance companies are obviously corporations, but they make it an offense to not have it. Like they force you to have it.
Wanna
You know what I'm saying?
That's a
elaborate on
violation
that?
of law. Yeah, Islam. This is why, again, why we must understand the Clearfield Doctrine. Now, this is the other deal that people need to know, even about the insurance companies. Just like by default necessity, people would use them in contract to limit liability, etc. But understand, the problem that we have is that it gives an air of legitimacy that they have substance that they're using to cover us when they actually don't. See, this is where the problem is. Meaning that here you will have foreign debtors that are actually using the Moorish estate from which they're occupying and creating bonds against your estate, then disconnect you from your estate by brand names, etc., and nom de guerre, and then they act as imposters, as Americans, and they are not. And then, because it's your estate, they actually use your signature against your own estate upon which the bond is written in the first instance. They're acting as administrator, and then are actually profiting from the color of operations of you even having to deal with them. It's like an imposter who inserts themselves and uses authority that doesn't belong to them and a resource that doesn't belong to them, and then have the people who are beneficiaries of these operations to compensate them energy for a resource and a power and a jurisdiction that not only doesn't belong to them, and then what they're presenting as the offer doesn't exist. And then they use your signature to access your own trust estate that you don't know you have because you don't know what your birthright nationality is. No one's telling you. The prophet told you, that's collectively. And then they got to some governors, etc., and had them sell out, and they've been constantly voiding the national side of this movement, and then not teaching divine law, etc., and then misrepresenting the religious affidavit, and then the people themselves are just simply seat-warming members, just like a reverse church, and have no fundamental knowledge on how to defend the birthright. And then when the ones who do know begin to do it, they think that they're a renegade or somebody that's out to lunch or against the movement, when the masses in the movement don't even know what the movement is about. Not because they're not sincere, it's because they're lacking information. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep it simple. This is how things operate. The corporation under the United States Corporation i.e. the states of, distinguished from the state republics, are all members of the Roman Curia. Write that down. They're all members of the Roman Curia. Roman Curia, C-U-R-I-A. So that's the first thing that we got to identify who's who. So we can, doesn't mean that their operations are all wrong in the nature of what the operation is. It is the jurisdiction and the beneficiary issue that's at hand that most of our people aren't aware of. Are we clear? So what you have is imposters in government. Are we clear? It's not personal to anyone in particular. You have imposters in government. You have the masses of people not being aware of that fact. Certain operations that they're doing are legitimate operations. Are we clear? However, they're designed to divert the benefit to persons to whom the benefit does not belong. Are we clear? Then they're using power and authority that's vested in government alone to impose contracts on people, which is a violation of law, which is what you're making reference to. For the purpose of stealing, in the first instance. Then you have the people who don't know the distinction of what government is or who's who. They just think anybody walks with a suit or tie and they say, well, I'm the law. You know, the masses don't even know jurisprudence, which is the science that treats of law. And law is a subject matter that comes under jurisprudence. They don't even know the rules. And so they're being taken advantage of. That's what is connotatively referred to as slavery. Law and history goes together. People who know and understand government know that. People who don't know government don't know that. Therefore, they'll usually get confused in the conversation when you bring up certain subject matters. They also don't know how to bring cure because their concepts are wrong. So somebody knows these are basic things, can easily and quickly begin to take advantage of them or dismiss them. And of course it creates frustration, but this is really what we're dealing with in North America. All right? We're dealing with a mass of people who don't know the difference between real and fake, or illusion, you know, de jure, real, de facto, fake. True Americans, Moors, fake Americans, European occupiers under colonial operations and powers. True white people, any free national. Do you understand? Fakery. Europeans taking on the title of white and our people thinking it's a complexion and a nation. Superior. And then they rejecting their own white status, which is an abandonment. Little subtle things are the dynamics that we're dealing with, and if we don't correct them, we can't fix the rest of this. Now, people on our side of the nation, and logically people who are under occupational powers, don't want this information out, don't want this stuff clear. Therefore, when you begin to dispense this information, it will tag it like it's terrorist stuff. They're doing terrorist papers. They're confusing, and all that kind of stuff. And people who don't know, you know, yeah, because they said that they are terrorists. And they start, you know, they're not operating on any balance. They don't know law. They never read the Constitution. And they go by emotions. And so if somebody sounds like they're, you know, got it going on, that's the law. And so now you got a bunch of incompetent people, but they're constantly complaining about the injuries that they're suffering from, but their suffering comes from their ignorance and not enforcing the Constitution. Here comes Noble Ali to fix this. And then they get so caught up in personality, and they don't even recognize his divine mission. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Then others who get so busy worshiping him as a person that they're ignoring the message that he brings. And so you create another schismatic environment where the people are scattered. Because some people can appreciate what he's doing, but they're so busy worshiping him, they're not carrying out the law, which is why he came. And so you have a bunch of Moors that's suffering the Negro problems that were supposed to be solved. Do you understand? Now you have the nations of the earth who recognize these problems because it spills over. See, because everything is bound to every other living thing. And so, cause and effect. We're talking divine law. Not religious law, divine law. Are we clear? This is nature's law and nature's God. These are called primal maxim principles, maxim laws that have nothing to do with what your beliefs are, where you are, how you feel, what your attitude is. They operate. It's like, oh, gravity. Oh, was that a Muslim gravity or Christian gravity? No. Once you understand these primal rules, they're primal rules in life that every living being in the physical form is supposed to be taught. These are called civics. Civilization. Are we clear? The science of government. In the carnal form, it requires movement of energy. The politics is the order by which resources and energies are housed, collected, dispensed, regulated. Are we clear?
Repeat that, brother. That was profound.
Not really. But politics is essentially the art and the science of gathering, and because you're dealing with energies all the time, housing, collecting, packaging, regulating movement, distribution of energies, i.e. resources. Right? It's not opinion, that's fact. Universal. When you're dealing with people that don't know these rules, they have a tendency to bridge them rules. And they also have a tendency to have false expectations. They also have a tendency not to recognize balance and the need for balance. Are we clear? Constitutions of life are based in divine law and the study of divine laws, and that is to keep a balance. This is so like as an example, women can best understand this. We can all really best understand because we all got mothers. But the deal is, all right, just like baby just came in, right? I mean, baby to us, but right. Farasha just came in and brought some fruits over to her mother, right? Now, many of you have been around for quite a while. Remember when she's a little teeny girl. Now she's growing up a little bit more, right? Now, the same principle as she's bringing to her mother would bring to her from her breast or from her hand until she's able to support herself. In nation states on the planet, the rule of nations operate exactly the same of matriarchy. Nationalization is when the imbalance is manifest. Do you understand? And then we say like this, right? All right, we're doing some other stuff. So we leave our children with you, right? And at any time it may be crossed like that. So when you talk about international, you're saying intermotherly. When one mother gets sick, or when there's too much milk leaving her and you create an imbalance, and the same thing with the mind, you nationalize. What does nationalization mean in government? It means we take your baby off her breast. Right now, you got to go to your own mom because we got to get things in balance. Because you're overtaxing the mother. So that the mother doesn't die, in order to save the mother, the nation, nativity, you got to relieve pressure and bring that energy back up. Are we clear? So, the gold, the silver, and the commerce belong to the citizens, and the citizens is based in divine law. Are we clear? Now, why did the Romans, Europeans come to North America? To steal our gold and silver and resources. To what? Create a disimbalance. To create an imbalance. Disorder. Dis-ease. Do you understand? We've been suffering from it. And so the prophet came to bring balance. Assigned as an avatar from divine order. It operates that way naturally once you understand civilization. And mothers will bring champions by divine law to bring balance. It's how things work. Once you understand this, nothing's a mystery. If you don't understand this, you get caught up in personalities. Oh, he's got a beard. His beard should be 3 inches long, but it's 2, so he can't be the prophet. You know, that kind of stuff. People, do you understand what I'm saying to you? People get all like, because they really don't, and they don't really understand how things work. So people have to understand how things work. So they must be taught the truth of divine law. Nature's law, nature's God. Has nothing to do with what you believe. It has to do with maxims of truths that are preserved and passed down from generation to generation to maintain balance. That's what constitutions are for. Keep in mind, let's cut through the chase because of the time factor. Over years, centuries, you had wars between the Muslims and the Christians. This is cutting through the chase. So you can come from the Punic Wars, that means Phoenicians. The Punic Wars on up to the Battle of Tours, Christian Crusades, Battle of Tours near Poitiers, France, etc. All of these are battles between the Moors and the Christians. Christian is not a religion in the concept that people have it. It is a hegemony system for the Roman hybrids. Are we clear? Now the Moors had ceded in the area to the Ibrida or the hybrids for their own, because they are not what you call indigenous to the planet. Are we clear? So therefore they are not indigene or they're not aboriginal. Are we clear? And because they have no estate, they've been like vandals going around stealing from everybody. So this has been the basis of most of what you see today. Forget nation states. We're giving you an overview of what's happening on the planet. All right? Most of your so-called nation states are no more than 100, 150 years old. They didn't exist beyond that, most of them. So what you have is a dissolution of the Moabite nation, which is a matriarchy, coming down to the Moorish nation, which is a matriarchy, patriarchy. Same nation. And the dissolution, which becomes your different nation states around the world. We're talking about the real world, the real politics of what's going on. All right? Now what you have is, in your modern contemporary foundation of politics, is where the Moors ceded the land of Angles, what you call England area, from the Druids to the hybrids who were taken from the area that you call Argentina and transported to the Isle of Patmos as a stop pass near what you call today Turkey. From there to the land of Angles, which is now called England land. Do you understand? Now, we'll get to those. Ceded. The land that you call England was ceded to the Europeans by the Moors.
Right.
Which means we gave them an area to be. There's two reasons, and we won't get into that because I want to stay mostly with the politics. It's because being Ibrida or hybrids, anywhere where you get close to the celestial equator, the sun will seek to kill them because of the hybrid, because they have the skin is the largest organ on the body, and the sun, because their nervous system is so close to the surface of the skin, because they have limited melanin, the sun will by its very nature kill them.
That's right.
So the move of the Moors taking the Europeans to the land of Angle was an act of love and consideration, not just of some hostile thing. Now, in the land of Angles, in that area, the way it sits on the globe, there's a generality of around 33 degrees most of the time. And it's misty and foggy and more compatible with their organ, their skin. This is why the land of Angles was chose. This is also why they're sometimes called Anglican. Do you understand? This is where you get the word Anglis or English, which is really not even their own. It's still your language. We gave it to them. So don't. So even when you're talking language, don't get things twisted with people who get caught on these social engineering things. You know, ours and theirs and we and them. It's not exactly like that. Do you understand? Because there's really only one culture on the planet. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So, like even when Drawley says, get yourself a good European education so I can use you, and a lot of people get upset. They don't understand that the European education is a Moorish education because they don't know about the Renaissance. The only reason why the Europeans ruling is because we brought them into the marvelous light, giving them. Oh, they were white and they were slaves. Yes, the untold story of the enslavement of whites in early Americas. Now, one of the things they were doing, and this is where that has to be cleared, they're basing that statement on the assumption that the Europeans are white people. But you must understand it's a legal title that was taken on by them from 54 to 63. This is with the Horace Greeley issue and even the Mummers Parade in Philly. So shows you how easy we can, yes. There's so much that Moors need to understand so that we don't fall into prejudices that we see others practice. Because once you have knowledge, you don't need all of those prejudices. What you need to do is fix things. Excuse me, interject.
Islam. No, I'm not interjecting. I want to raise a question. Well, Ashley, can you show the connection, being that you're talking about England land?
Mm-hmm.
And that whole English connection with the Moors. Can you also speak on the Magna Carta?
Yes.
And its relation to them and us?
Yes.
Also, take that and go into the UCCs because we got a question on the floor.
Yes.
About the beginning of UCCs and the usages of UCCs by Moors.
And it shows you how you can easily because there's so much. There's so much what you call primal things that we're trying to drop, so that everybody be on time, or kind of understand where we're coming from. Now the Magna Carta is actually given to them. That's sort of like liberation for them from the Moorish nobles. So a lot of times when people are looking at England and looking at the lords and the Danes and the Dubs and the Morays, they're thinking what they see in the movies. When they see European guys with the armor and stuff riding on their horses, all cool and stuff, you know, that wasn't them. That was you. Do you understand? So when they're making a lot of those movies and they show you a lot of these noble kings and stuff as Europeans, that's not true.
Even the titles they use wasn't them.
Yes,
that was
not
us.
those. They're not. It's not true. You know, now that's a whole other thing we can get into, but I want to stay on focus. But
just to speak on the topic of how we reinvent our story, like there was the Lone Ranger story was actually a story by a guy by the name of Bass Reeves.
Yes.
Who actually was he was a slave, and he beat up the slave masters, and he went to the western countries like Oklahoma, and he became known as one of the baddest Westerners there. He locked up over 2,000 criminals and so on and so forth. The story Lone Ranger came from that story.
And let's look at this too. And this is, and it shows you how we got to really work, because we got to change our language, right? Number one, we were not slaves. We were bound free men. So we got to recognize when Moors are using the word slavery, we're using it connotatively, and we must always qualify. Slave refers to the Slovakians when the Red Russians went into the Slovakian nations and subdued them. And it's a connotatively used word. Contemporary in its nature cannot be taken retroactive in history because it creates false concepts, which creates a lie. So we're not slaves, we're bound free men. And so recognize when it's said connotatively, knowing that it has to be corrected later. Do you understand? You got to get people where they are and then correct it. That's why Islam is given in degrees. Because if you go with a slave argument, then you're incompetent. When you're gonna make an argument before world court, or legitimate court, and you're talking about you're a slave, you just lied. You know, because you're not Slovakian.
Slavic.
You know, you're bound freemen. You're Moors, bound freemen, and the word slave is used connotatively. All right, that's where the connotative linguistics was introduced by the dark priesthood in order to suppress legal argument when it would be eventually made, knowing that light would eventually come to the people, and then they would have to make a legal argument. And once they start making a legal argument, and they got a knowledge of themselves and their language didn't change, they can be declared incompetent. Then they can put a deputy knight on them from England, who's deputy knights for the popes of Rome under the secret treaty of Verona, and then take over your claim because you have no right of claim, because if you're not competent in law, you're not heritable. Write that down, because you need to put this all in context of what we're talking about right now, because we can't go over all these things. Escheat, E-S-C-H-E, right, A-T. Just like cheat, escheat, all right? Wardship, minor and minority. So keep in mind, the Magna Carta was given to the Europeans, grant them liberties, etc. And those principles come from Moorish law. And so that's why a lot of the nature of that same principle is applied in the American Constitution. And Obama tried to expose some of this, you know, because he's a constitutional lawyer. And so when he went to Hikupta, that's strategic. Hikupta is the proper name of what you call Egypt. All high priests know that. All true scholars know that that's not Egypt. That's a modern
It's a modern term.
Hikupta. H-I-K-U-P-T-A-H. See Ptah at the end of it?
Hikupta.
That's where you get Ptah. This is also where the Christians get Peter coded that they put in the Bible. And the power of Peter and the power of the Pope comes from Ptah. And they taken your seat. So the Pope represents the Sultan of the planet. Pharaohs of Hikupta. That's why that power is absolute. Do you understand? You got to understand they're stealing your birthright. You need to understand the politics of the world. Don't reject everything. Study things. Understand how things operate. Do you understand? Understand if you're dealing with electricity, you're dealing with what? Anode, cathode. Anode, Allah, cathode, Catholicism. You got opposite poles.
That's right.
You're dealing with polar energies. Energies itself is what you're dealing with. Even when you're talking about the metaphysical principles or the divine law, you're really talking about the monad Atman spark of life that manifests in the physical body, which is really the higher self and the lower self. So that you understand that energy is what the vampires are after. Do you understand? So that's a whole nother thing. Now, let's get beyond that. There's a treaty that was made, agreed.
One second.
Wait.
Islam, for our online viewers, give us 2 minutes to log out and log back on so we can refresh it, so we can have more time for you. You can keep going,
All right, yeah.
but I have to log off
Go
for a
do what
minute.
do what you do.
Don't
Now,
go nowhere. Islam.
with the secret treaty of Verona, that's the agreement of them doing the overthrow.